For this video, we are going to work on the head. You actually don't really need to see the body, so I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to hide the selection. Now if I come up here on the head, I can actually start with creating a box. Just like the body, it doesn't really matter. You can just kind of make a box because we can adjust that in a little bit. I'm going to go to the Move tool. Just like before, I actually want to make sure that it is centered. So bring it down to the origin. I'm going to bring it back up to the head over here. So that's overlapping it. See, if we look at it in this viewport, we want it to kind of be centered. And I can also adjust the height and the width. Let's see here, I want to make that actually, let's make it around there. And I want to give it a little bit of transparency, just like I did before. Let's go 0.5. So now I'm going to use the slice plane tool just like I did last time. So if you go down here to slice plane, you'll notice that it's actually 90 degrees from where I need it. So I'm going to rotate that. Try to get that exactly 90 degrees. Now you need to make sure that you actually have the entire thing selected if you want slice plane to work. So I'm going to just select element, slice plane, and slice. Turn slice plane off. See, now it is cut down the middle. I'm going to go to polygon selection. You need to make sure that you deselect polygon so that you just have this half the face selected. Go to our mirror modifier just like we did last time. Going to make a copy and we are good to go. Let's select this again and make sure that we can see the changes in the viewport. Now we are going to be making an eye socket here and we need to make sure that we have the edges that we need in order to create that. So first of all, I'm going to create a loop right here to just be the top of the brow. And also we need to make sure we have one here for the mouth. And we definitely need to have one that's going top to bottom over here, and one that kind of cuts straight into the center of the eye. So now we are going to use a tool called chamfer. I'm going to go into vertex selection, and chamfer is going to help us to make this eye. Going to make sure you have the correct vertex selected first of all. Okay, so going back to the front viewport, and you'll notice I've got this nice little star shape. You can change the number of edges that you have in it, but I'm going to set it to 0. You hit OK. Since we're already in the Move tool, I'm just going to adjust this a little bit. So I'm going to bring that up to that edge of the eye. This one's going to be right over there, and this one should be right around here. I'm going to cut in a couple more edges. So if you go down to, first of all, polygon selection, I scroll down to cut. Now you're going to notice that if you hover over a vertex, the icon's going to change for cut. And this is what it looks like if it's on a polygon, and here's what it looks like if it's on an edge. So I'm going to cut that one in. And I'm going to go from this vertex to that edge. I'm going to go back to vertex selection, turn cutoff. I'm going to move this up to give us kind of an eye outline. Okay, now we can do a little bit of adjustment. I'm going to kind of round it out a little bit. Let's bring the mouth down a little. And I can bring that part of the mouth up. And to go over these vertices. Now, I know that the temptation for a lot of people is going to be to start with a sphere, but the thing is that later on, when you attach this head to the neck, you're going to notice that we're going to have a limited number of faces down here, and we actually want that to match. We want the edges and the hole in the bottom of the head to match the edges on the neck. And if you go with the sphere, it's going to give you an awful lot of edges. Go back here to the front viewport. Bring this down a little. Now you'll notice the other side isn't going to mirror it perfectly, but that's fine. This really is just kind of a guide. Now let's take a look at the left viewport. You'll notice that this does not look as it should. Just going to do some more adjustments here. Okay, so let's zoom in and let's take a look at this face. See what does this look like. Not too bad to start off with, although I would say that we probably need to put some more edges in here, definitely. So first of all, let's bring this down a little bit. Okay, so yeah, that's the top of that eye. And let's see if we can get that around here. Okay, so what is this going to look like? Okay, so that actually looks a little bit messed up how it's kind of angled. It's because I bet I was thinking about the brow, but that's an easy enough fix. And also, let's take a look up here. We need to round this out a bit too. So let's start moving these vertices. So Sometimes it's just easier to actually go into perspective with this because then you can actually see kind of what it's going to look like. Also, almost forgot, I do need to put a swift loop in here for that. So that kind of goes up next to where his smile ends and up there into the top of the head. And just to round it out, I'm going to put another one in. See if we can grab several. Yeah, that helps. There we go. Front of the face is starting to round out a little bit. Sometimes with things like this, it's easier to come back in here, and if you go to object properties and crank up the visibility, you can actually see the shape a little bit better. But I think I'm going to put a cut in another edge right here. Oh, I know why it wasn't working. There you go. Since I'm primarily working this viewport and just kind of spinning around, I think I'm just going to maximize it. I think I'm going to turn these planes off for right now, just so that I can see it, because right now I'm just kind of rounding this thing out. I know that I'm going to want these things to be flat. So I'll just make planar. And let's take a look at some more vertices. Still looks a little square here to me. Notice I'm not grabbing it in the middle, I'm grabbing right here, so it's along the X and Y axis. You've got to be really careful with that. If you accidentally grab it in the middle, you're going to be pulling it all kinds of different directions, and it can actually get kind of messed up. Right? Starting to look a little better. Okay, so now I'm going to select this eye socket. I'm going to remove it. I'm also going to unhide these planes. Also going to unhide these planes. Let's go from the front. I'm going to put that transparency back into it. The object properties. Okay. Now we're going to start working on trying to give form to the nose, the mouth, and the eye socket anyway. I worked a little bit more on refining the head. I put in some edge loops and I moved some things around. If I go into the left viewport, you can see kind of how I tried to put in the chin. I tried to also kind of make things follow the contour of the mouth and the contour of the head a little bit. Now, if you rotate around and we take a look at the front, you'll notice that one of my edge loops had actually followed the loop that comes up here into the eye, which actually I do not want. Thankfully, this is actually a pretty simple fix. If I go over here and I go to vertex selection and I right click on this and remove it, it removes that vertex and that edge. Now, just to make it easy on myself, I'm going to remove this one too. And to fix this, I'm just going to do a quick cut. From that vertex to right here. Cut, and let's go to here. There we go. I'm going to go into the front viewport. I'm going to move that eye piece just so that it makes sense. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to work on is actually trying to make it so that the eye has a little bit of an edge around the eyelid. This is pretty easy to do if you just come over here and grab the edges. I'm going to extrude this the same way that I extruded the other parts. If I go to the Y-axis, hold down Shift, just going to bring that out and do the same thing to bring it inward. Actually, I don't like the way that that one looks, so I'm going to come up here and see if maybe scale works better. Let's try it with the center. Okay, of the three options, actually, I think I like that one a bit better. I am going to have to make a couple adjustments, though. This is one of the benefits to making sure that this thing is centered, though, is that I can come right up here, go to the Move tool, and I can zero this thing out along the x-axis. So then if I wanted to bring this down, I can go ahead and do that. Actually, I kind of want this to be the edge of the eye socket. So I'm just going to move those around a little bit. Just some more refinement, really. So did I move anything I didn't intend to move? No, I think it's good. Okay, now I'm going to select that edge again, and this time let's go ahead and let's shift and move it inward. I want the lid to have kind of a little bit of depth to it, so I'm just going to bring in the side a little here. And I'm curious to see what this whole thing looks like with NURMS, so I'm just going to apply some NURMS to it. You're going to actually edit it in this mode. Yeah, I want that to look a little bit rounder than it did. Same here. Alright, it doesn't look bad. I think I might want to actually bring this down a little. That really is just all preference. Okay, I think that looks good. I also want to make the mouth. I'm going to turn NURMS off so I can get a little bit better of a view of this. Hit F to go into the front viewport. I'm going to try to bring this vertex down to that part of the mouth, and let's bring this one up to the corner. I'm going to select this edge, and let's chamfer that. Just to give it a little bit of some spacing in there. I'm going to select these polygons. I'm going to delete it. Probably going to do a couple of cuts because I do want to be able to refine this a little bit better. Let me pause. I'm going to go ahead and bring this down a little. Okay, that generally is following the smile. We're going to give him a little bit of some lips. So I'm just going to bring that out a little. Let's go ahead and scale it in. Hold down Shift to scale in a little bit. Now I'm going to go ahead and use the Move tool to hold down Shift, copy it going back into the mouth a little bit. Now this is going to take a little bit of some adjustment to try to make it look right. So what I'm going to actually do is try to move this a little bit closer to here. And move this down a little bit. I'm going to keep it so that the outside edge of the mouth is staying on the outside edge. But we also can definitely need to make sure that things are kind of making sense. I'm going to try selecting edges here. Move the edges back a little bit. To try to help out with this, I'm actually going to go into the object properties and I'm going to turn visibility up all the way. Because it's kind of hard to see when you can see behind it. There's a little bit of complexity here and it's I want to make sure that it doesn't look bad. So you're going to have to really kind of pay a lot of attention when you go into the corner of the mouth because it's going to look pretty bad if you don't get it where you need it to. Let me see here if I can target weld this. So if I can target weld that one, that'll, yeah, cool. Glad that worked. Okay. Let's rotate around. Interesting. See if we can make sense of this. Yeah, I think that's just the part of the mouth that's going inward. Which is fine. We kind of need to have that anyway. I'm going to bring this over here. That's making a little bit more sense now. I see why it looks the way it does. Okay, so that's the outside edge of the lip. Alright, so it looks like we've got some interesting things to work with over here. Interesting. So for some reason, oh, I see. This edge needs to be brought over. The same with this one. Bless you. Bless you. Alright, I'm gonna move these all to the center, because that's where they belong. Okay, just a few more adjustments here on the mouth. Just takes a little bit of patience until you get it looking the way that you want it to. Okay, let's turn on NURMS and let's see what this thing looks like so far. Okay, so he's got a little bit of lips that's kind of weird looking, so I definitely want to make some adjustments there. If you keep NURMS on, you can actually can kind of see how it's going to translate when you try to create this guy, when you kind of move things where you want it to. Yeah, you can see how this is. So if I bring that up, I'm going to add that transparency back in now. 0.6 is fine. That way I can see these vertices. Let's go ahead and just kind of bring this back a little bit. Let's look at it from the left viewport. Okay, so his mouth definitely needs to go back quite a bit. Like that far. But that doesn't look right. It still looks kind of messed up. Okay, I made some adjustments off camera and I just moved some vertices and edges around, and actually I'm pretty happy with it. It kind of gives them a little bit of some cheekbones. And then the previous versions I've created have never really existed. But you'll just have to kind of mess around with it until you get it looking the way that you want. This is what it looks like with NURMS turned on. If I turn NURMS off, it looks like that. So now I'm going to turn the transparency back, turn the visibility back down to like 0.6, 0.5. Go back into the front viewport, and we can see that the head is, so now we have the mouth complete, as well as the socket for the eye. And the next part, I actually, what I did was I selected these two and I clicked Make Planar, or to make it flat. That is going to be what we are going to use to extrude the nose part out. Once you've converted it into an editable poly, now all you have to do is, and if everything is aligned correctly, you actually can just highlight all the vertices along the middle of the face, and you're going to select weld. The reason for that is because it's actually trying to look for vertices that are within a certain distance to weld to, and since they're all overlapping, you can come over here and do polygon selection to start working on the nose. I'm going to use extrude for this. Make that go out a little. Going to angle it. try using bevel instead, because bevel is kind of combines extrude and also makes it go inward a little. Let's go to bevel again. Yes, you may. And we're going to do one more bevel. We're going to come over here and use inset. And then one more extrude to kind of make it go inward a little bit. Actually, I think I'm going to go with bevel on that one. That way it kind of goes inward. Going into wireframe override, I can see how it's actually kind of moving into the side of the nose. I'm going to move that up to here. Let's use another bevel. There, that should be out of sight now. Okay, so I don't particularly like the way that this one looks in the front, and so actually I'm going to change it to try to make it a little bit more like the picture. So I'm going to go back to default shading. Going to give this thing a little bit more transparency. Crank it back down to like 0.5 or 6. Maybe even less than that. There we go. So that way I can see that. I can go back to edged faces so that I can see all of this. Let's go ahead and I'm going to make another cut. Put a swift loop right in here. Select this edge. Oops. That one right there. Just going to move that in a little. Grab that edge. We're going to move that in a little bit. In fact, let's just take all of this. Let's take these polygons. Let's shrink it a little. I'm going to grab these two vertices, move them in a little bit more. Let's move that one down a little. And I give it a little bit of a pucker, kind of like lips. Now, if we take a look at the way that the nose looks on this one, it's actually kind of turned to the side a little bit. Actually, it looks like it'd be a little bit narrower. I'm going to move these just because I want it to be a little bit more uniform. Hey, Andres, try to lock in. We got to catch up, buddy. Let's rotate this. There we go. Let's crank it up a bit more so I can see it better. Something else I'm going to try to do here really quickly. Just going to isolate this. It needs to be in a little bit more. Doesn't make sense for it to flare. It needs to flare a bit more there. Okay. And make sure this goes in uniformly. Same with this one. All right, let's apply NURMS and let's see what this guy looks like. Let's turn edged faces off. And let's also reduce the transparency, or the visibility, back up to 1. Okay, I kind of like the way that looks. I think that'll work.